My name is Olivia Blake and I'm a proud sponsor of the Climate Ecology Bill. We need this bill to achieve Labour's Green Transformation Plan, which will create jobs, deliver sustainable growth, restore nature and bring about a zero-carbon, nature-positive economy that works for everyone. The CE Bill has been drafted with world-leading scientists to make sure that the UK tackles the climate and nature crises in a joined-up way. In this now or never moment for the planet, this bill would ensure that the UK cuts emissions in line with our last chance to keep global heating to 1.5 degrees C, and would see our countryside transform from one of the most nature-depleted places on Earth to a vibrant, nature-rich environment with our natural world on the path to recovery by 2030. The CE Bill would deliver a science-led and people-powered plan, a clear way forward for the UK to deal with this emergency, making sure that no one is left behind in the urgent need for a just transition. I am proud to be working with 0 Hour, the campaign for the CE Bill. They are a fantastic organisation and they have built up an impressive alliance of scientists, NGOs, businesses and charities, demonstrating a huge groundswell of support for this idea. 42,000 members of the public already support the campaign, and many of these individuals are tirelessly campaigning across the UK to see this bill become law, and I'd like to thank each and every one of them for their efforts. The bill is supported by MPs from across all the main political parties, including 74 Labour and Labour Co-op MPs and peers, Mayor Khan, and dozens of Labour-run councils. As a party, we already back the ambition and objectives of the CE Bill. Now it's time to take our support to the next step. That's why I'm so excited to say at least 9 CLPs have put forward a conference motion on the CE Bill, recognising that this piece of legislation will make Labour's vision of fairer, greener future a reality. And to all delegates, please do prioritise and vote for motions relating to the CE Bill this week. There are immense co-benefits from tackling climate change and nature loss, including cleaning up our illegally polluted rivers and creating jobs in both the cleaner, greener, cheaper energy sector and in the nature recovery sector. We have an opportunity as a Labour movement to take a joined-up action through the CE Bill to get the UK on track. And we must seize this moment to be bold, to listen to the warnings of scientists, to give confidence to business and to take on board constituents' repeated requests to deliver a serious, joined-up response to tackle the climate and ecological emergency at home and abroad. I'll now hand over to my colleague Ruth Jones, who will talk about why reversing nature loss is so important. Welcome, Ruth.
Thanks very much, Olivia. And it's great to see so many people in this room this morning, Sunday morning. It's a pretty good testament to how important this issue is to everybody here. So thank you very much for the welcome, and welcome to Liverpool, everybody. I hope you all had a great first night. I want to thank our host and our organisers for bringing us all together here this morning. I'm conscious I've only got 5 minutes, so I want to be quite clear and concise. I apologise if I'm reading some of this, but some of the detail, I want you to have the detail, so I want to make sure I get it right. So my name is Ruth Jones. I am the Member of Parliament for Newport West in South Wales, and I'm Shadow Environment Minister, working with our new Shadow Secretary of State, Steve Reid, so it's great, very exciting times. But it will come as no surprise to anybody in this room, and looking around this room, there are a lot of very well-educated people in this area, that the United Kingdom is one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. Liz, you already said that. And that's why we need to take the case for tackling biodiversity loss and climate change and environmental risks to the absolute health and the health of our public, which is the biggest challenge of our time. And that's why the Climate and Ecology Bill is so important, as Olivia's very clearly laid out. Halting and reversing biodiversity loss in the UK by 2030 is absolutely essential. Let's make no bones about that. It's absolutely essential. There can be no more dithering or delay, as we've seen from this government, and no more missed deadlines, as we've seen so many times. This is an emergency and it needs to be treated as such. I'm afraid the government is setting their baseline far too low. Their 30 by 30 agenda ignores the other 70% of our land, and our national parks are in a poor state of health after 13 years of Conservative government, and our protected natural areas need far more focus and support. The fact that the Tory government failed to meet their own deadlines under the Environment Act 2021 doesn't inspire anybody with much confidence they were ever going to get round to meeting the 3030 deadline. So, you know, they're not exactly setting the bar high there. Nature fundamentally underpins our human health, our well-being and our collective prosperity. By protecting our planet and preserving our environment, we deliver for all the people in Liverpool, in Sheffield, in Newport West and all around the UK. And I've always understood the importance of that challenge, and so does the Labour Party. We view the environment through a twin lens, human health and environment health. They go together. We see the impact of inaction all around us. In recent years, we've seen wildfires in Australia, Africa and the United States. We've seen drought in Zimbabwe and Sudan and other parts of southern Africa. We've seen flash flooding and we've seen increasingly erratic changes in temperatures the world over. This issue is as global as it is local, which is why we need to consider people living in increasingly expensive houses without proper insulation, who are now increasingly dependent on prohibitively expensive fossil fuels. So that's why this Labour government will cut energy bills and fight climate change by insulating millions of homes and making the UK the first major economy to have a zero emissions power system. Also, if we are lucky enough or fortunate enough to form the next government, we will introduce a proper windfall tax on the obscene profits of the oil and gas companies to protect both vulnerable people and our vulnerable planet. And I just want to say a quick word about those living in communities plagued by toxic air and dirty water. Restoring nature will never happen successfully without us acknowledging that these issues disproportionately affect disadvantaged communities and the health of our natural environment. Our poorest communities are also twice as likely to live in a neighbourhood without nature-rich spaces, which is absolutely outrageous and completely unfair. I want our country to be a place where everyone has proper access to wild places and wildlife. In other words, delivering for the natural world requires both social and economic justice. A healthy natural world and more equitable access to nature are key priorities for us. Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves and Ed Miliband, as well as Steve Reid and colleagues in the Shadow Cabinet have been clear on this. And as a party, we have pledged not just words, but a proper approach to investment to tackle the climate crisis and create clean, green, secure jobs for people in all parts of the UK. A Labour government will deliver a science-led, joined-up plan to tackle the climate and ecological emergency. We know that climate action must be nature-positive action and that we must halt and reverse the loss of biodiversity by 2030 for the benefit of all people and the planet. This important declaration and the Climate and Ecology Bill alongside it will be a huge step towards ensuring we achieve that aim. So I want to say thank you to all of you for coming today. I'm sorry some of you were sat on the floor, but thank you for coming to show your support for this and for caring, and thank you for all you do for preserving the planet, and I look forward to working with you in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth. That's really positive to hear. We'll now hear from Kerry McCarthy, MP, who will discuss the need to do everything we can in the final fight to limit global heating to 1.5.
Okay, we'll start off by thanking Olivia for championing this bill. We've had, I think, a couple of events in Parliament now, and I think it's really important that we have something that people can rally round while we're in opposition, particularly given what the sort of mood music, if you like, or the signals that are being sent out by this government. And in some ways, you know, disappointing though it is that Sunak has started like the war on net zero and gone backwards, you know, with, for example, scrapping the 2030 target for the ban on the sale of new petrol and diesel vehicles, and some of the home heating, the retrofit, the energy efficiency stuff and various other things. In some ways I think that helps because Labour had two choices when Sunak chose to do that. We either could have said, well, we're a little bit nervous, Uxbridge by-election, ULEZ and that, maybe he's got a point, or we could have absolutely stuck to our guns and actually doubled down on what we know is the right thing to do, which is to tackle the climate emergency, to tackle the nature emergency. Last year's conference, I think was the first, well, certainly the first conference where green featured in the conference logo, but you heard announcements about setting up GB Energy, about what is now one of Keir's 5 missions, clean power by 2030. You know, I hope about the Green Prosperity Plan, which is, it's not our response to what Joe Biden's done in the States with the Inflation Reduction Act, because we actually announced that we were going to do it beforehand, but the fact that Joe Biden is providing that economic stimulus and helping that just transition, particularly in left behind communities, areas with high unemployment, areas where there have been energy intensive industries in the past, that, you know, proves that we were on the right track anyway, and it proves even more that if we don't want to be left behind, we have to do that stimulus too. So the scene was already set, and as I said, with Sunak, I hope that in the conference speeches that you'll hear this week, you will hear more about how we plan to do that. The ask of the campaign, other than the sort of particular stuff around the bill, was for Labour to commit to reversing the decline in nature, which Ruth has addressed. But I can also confirm that in terms of the 1.5 degrees, you know, that is absolutely our intention. Our job will be more difficult given the government is going backwards on that front, and we know that the government has been taken to court by Climate Earth for failing to meet its net zero. Its own strategy does not get it to where it needs to be, so it's lack of a strategy. We know the Committee on Climate Change has condemned the government for not taking enough action. So we know that it's not on track and it will miss the next couple of carbon budgets. But so we will inherit a difficult situation, but as I said, Keir's mission for clean power, you will hear a lot more about, and if I can just sort of say briefly, in terms of what you might hear this week, we've identified some obstacles to getting there. It's a really ambitious challenge to go to clean energy by 2030. Some of the things that all the businesses, all the groups we're talking to are saying a problem, grid connectivity. And that's not a very exciting topic in some ways, and it's something that people don't actually even sort of realise is central to the mission. But we will not be able to do it unless we free up the grid. And at the moment, clean energy projects are finding they're getting grid connection times in the 2030s, even in the 2040s, and that has absolutely got to be sorted out, and hopefully you'll hear a bit more. Planning system as well. Now, there's a delicate balance to be struck because you want local people to have, you know, the whole thrust of what Labour talks about is devolving powers to local communities and making sure local communities are informed. But at the moment, you can't build onshore wind because David Cameron decided in 2015 that if only one person objected, you couldn't do it. Actually, one of the only places that's done it, Bristol has got a wind turbine that went up earlier this year, produces enough, and it was a community project, and the community just all came together and said, we are doing it, really deprived community. It provides enough electricity to power 3,000 homes. It will, once they've paid off the loans, bring £1 million a year into that community to be sent on community projects. But that is one big wind turbine. I went when they were with Ed Miliband a week or so ago. But we could be doing that across the country en masse. And we could also be replicating the sort of thing that Bristol's doing with its City Leap project, getting private sector money in for that home decarbonisation and so on. And our role as government is to facilitate that sort of work. So freeing up the planning system so that you can't have, you know, so that we can go ahead with onshore wind and with solar, freeing up grid connectivity, doing a lot of work on skills, because if we don't have the people to actually do the home retrofitting, and investment in green tech as well. Everyone I speak to says the private sector investment is there. We don't need to spend lots of public money on it. We just need to send out signals that we are serious about doing this. And that's why what the government has been saying is so damaging, because businesses don't know whether they're coming or going, and when they've got Joe Biden saying, come here, we've created the right investment environment, they're going to go there. So there's an awful lot more I can say. One thing I want to say just very quickly is the connection with Ruth's brief, nature-based solutions to climate change. So important. At the last election, there was a real battle about who was going to plant how many millions of trees and that. It's not just about trees, it's about peatlands, it's about salt marshes, it's about blue carbons. Our oceans are incredible carbon sinks, and I'm looking at ways that we can get finance into that, we can get protection into that. And I would say that will partly be through carbon offsetting. Carbon offsetting should only be used if people can't, if companies can't reduce their carbon. So the first thing is you reduce your emissions, you stop going down the dirty fuel path or whatever. But in some hard to decarbonise sectors, that's where you won't immediately be able to do that because the technology's there, not there, the grid connection or whatever. That money is there to invest in nature-based solutions, and I'm very keen to establish proper carbon markets where there's not greenwashing, there's not people investing money in projects that aren't worth a bean. So I'm doing a lot of work on that side, on that green finance thing as well, and I think that's really important. Okay.
Always need to hear a shout out for peatlands as the
Yes.
So we'll now hear from Professor George McGavin,
Oh, thanks.
explorer,
I got a personal chair now, great.
explorer, broadcaster and entomologist, who is going to talk more about the challenge we are facing and why we
Yes.
need the CEL.
Yes, yes. Thank you for the award of an honorary chair. That was very kind of you. I'm a mere doctor.
Oh, I'm
Mere
so
doctor.
sorry.
No, leave it. When I started my degree in Edinburgh University and I graduated in 1975, I was full of excitement and hope and enthusiasm for the natural world. I picked a degree that was going to take me around the world. It was going to make me happy. I was going to find new species of animals. I was going to write papers. Instead, what has happened is I have had a lifetime of anxiety, constant anxiety, as I see every place I go being whittled away, burnt, slashed, felled. The only thing I'm glad about is I'm not a climate scientist. Because if I was a climate scientist, I think I'd be in rehab, I'd be in therapy most of my life. In fact, now departments, am I right on this, that have to inbuild, counselling for their staff who are involved in climate change. It is so, and students. But here's the problem. Humanity has become a dominant force in shaping the face of the earth ever since we first developed agriculture. For a long time we were hunter-gatherers, and only in a very, very short 10,000 years or so have we become a problem. And my goodness, we have become a problem. In 2020, that's only 3 years ago, the mass of human-made stuff, plastics, aggregates, steel, metals, all exceeded biomass, the total world biomass for the first time. So we were able to make more manufactured stuff than was actually alive on Earth. Our livestock animals now are enormous, enormous herds. They're bigger than all wild animals put together. And every day we slaughter 225 million animals to eat. And there's a huge tension between those who would want to keep and profit from free market capitalism and those of us who know that there is a massive climate and ecology emergency, and you can't do both. You simply cannot do both. You have to pick. And as you said earlier, the last 12 months have been spectacular. The hottest days ever recorded. This September, the hottest September ever recorded. Largest wildfire season ever. The extent of the Antarctic ice sheet is now at a record low. Rainfall records have been broken around the globe. 3 trillion trees have been cut down. Thousands of species are threatened and heading for extinction. 40% of the land is now used up for food production or in some other non-natural way. And there are some of us calling for a third of the planet to be wilderness. Fingers crossed on that. Atmospheric carbon dioxide up 50%. Atmospheric methane up 250%. Microplastics, which were unheard of when I was born. No plastics were produced, very little, are now ubiquitous in the oceans, in the ocean floors, in our flesh, and in our blood. And that's the problem. Global warming, of course, approaches 1.5. We simply must keep it as close to 1.5 as we can get. Although a new UN report suggests that in the next 1 to 4 years, there is a 66% chance that we might in one of those years pop over the 1.5. So we are perilously close, and this is why it is essential to get our skates on. These are symptoms of a world in overshoot. And we've had reports, Das Gupta report, which is funded, the most remarkable report. If you haven't read it, read the headlines. These are symptoms of a world in overshoot. We are using more resources, we are drawing down more resources than they can be restored. It simply isn't going to work. We are releasing wastes and pollutants into the atmosphere faster than the Earth has systems to render them harmless, if indeed they ever can. We are the first human beings who can look back at Earth from space and see exactly what we've done. We can go, oh yeah, we did that. We talk, and we talk, and we talk. And you've all seen the graph of CO2 rising with COP conferences studied along the line. It has made no difference. None. It just gets on going. We're drowning in data, drowning in it. Why has there been so little action? Does the job seem just too big? Is that what it is? Do we imagine that science is going to sort it out? Somebody's going to come along and say, oh guys, I've just invented this incredible thing, it's going to work. Salvation, hallelujah. Well, possibly. And that may work piecemeal. We need to tackle it holistically. We need to be proactive, not reactive. But if we cling to fossil fuels, we risk everything for the sake of a few dollars more. And that just simply is not going to work. Or is it that we're simply afraid that if we take action and nobody else does, we're going to lose out? We're going to lose out. Oh, they're going to get better off and we're going to get poorer. Oh my goodness. Sorry, are we going to wake up to the reality of what is happening as we starve, boil and drown? We have an enormous task ahead of us, but we must not let its enormity paralyze us into inaction. The stakes are simply too high to sit by and go, well, we'll do it tomorrow. Delayism is now the big issue. Outright denial of climate change is now passé almost. There are a few nuts around, but you know, now it's delayism. And if anybody talks out, oh, they're doomers, so you're painted into a corner by being branded a doomerist. We have to realise that the threat we face is simply bigger than anything we can imagine. And what we need now, and I say this with some hesitation, we need a war cabinet. We need almost, opposing political parties. It's bigger than that. We need a war cabinet where we get the best people doing the best job they possibly can, not pulling in opposite directions. That's going to happen. And we can't be afraid of those who will complain, and there will be people who complain. Make no mistake, we are heading towards global, environmental, economic and societal collapse. But there is time to address these problems that might soften their impact. And the time is now. You can't put it off now. The Climate Ecology Bill is the only proposed legislation before Parliament that ensures a comprehensive, joined-up approach to deal with the frankly dreadful reality of what is around the corner. And if anybody is not concerned, they simply haven't been paying attention. Thank you.
We'll now hear from Professor Nathalie Pettorelli, a climate change ecologist who's perfectly placed to outline the nature side of the CE bill as well as its joint approach.
Yes, I was really happy to hear that Kerry wanted a science-led world government plan to recover nature and tackle climate change solution, because that's exactly what the Climate and Ecology Bill is. It was written by scientists. It has brought a lot of the science that we have developed for the past 30 years together. It's basically a world government join-up strategy to tackle the climate change and nature emergency together. Now you may wonder, why would you want to tackle those together? And that's because they are extremely intertwined. whenever you're losing nature, you're accelerating the climate change emergency. And that's because not only nature stocks a lot of carbon, so every time you put fire and you degrade peatlands, every time you get rid of salt marshes, you're putting more carbon into the atmosphere. But also because nature is a cost-effective, test and trialed way to actually store carbon. If you think about salt marshes, they can store between 10 and 70 tons of carbon per hectare. If you think just about peatlands, it's 3.2 billion tons of carbon already locked in. So nature is really an ally when it comes to tackling the climate change emergency. And then it goes the other way around. So as we have a rapid change in climatic conditions, what we see is nature being hammered more and more. We're losing species, we're also moving species into new areas which disrupt ecosystem services, and therefore all the things that we rely on: fresh air, pure water, food and pollination for our food. So those two really need to be combined together. Now, we talk a lot about nature in terms of climate change mitigation. What people don't think about enough, in my view, is climate change adaptation. Because things are already changing and we're going to have to adapt. And nature provides an incredible way to do that. If you think about floods, nature can increase the rate of water infiltration. It can slow water flows. When you're thinking about heat wave, not very difficult to imagine. 38, 39 degrees, you want trees, you want shadow. When you think about drought, having wildlife really help with, and space for wildlife, really help with establishing species that are resistant and can create new niche for other species. So this is all about not only mitigation, but mitigation and adaptation. Now you will hear a lot of people saying, well, we can have technological solutions to climate change. Of course, scientists will invent something. Well, none of those solutions are proven and tested and trialed. None of them are ready. And most important, none of them provide with the co-benefits that nature provides you with. And that's really the thing to remember. It's cost effective, it's cheaper to recover nature, but you get also all those extra plus, to really help us adapt as we're going to go through rapid changes in climatic conditions. Why do we need a legally binding, which is what the Climate and Ecology Bill really calls for, is for confidence. Those back and forth in decision, those, oh, let's do this, no, actually we're going to do that, doesn't help business really transition, doesn't help us go where we need to go. And transition is inevitable. It's when we're going to do it. And the earlier, the cheaper. The legally binding, the most confidence, the business and the whole society will move forward. What I really love with the Climate and Ecology Bill also is that you get that voice from people through the Climate and Nature Assembly, where people can actually discuss, because that's big change. People need to have a voice, need to be able to discuss their worry and move together. And have not this top-down, but this whole society kind of approach, which we really need and which is embedded in that bill. When we think about climate change, you will see, for example, that yesterday it was in the news that a third of the days in 2023 have already passed 1.5 degrees, which goes into the doom and gloom of saying, oh, well, this is finished. Not at all. We need to, as quickly as possible, reduce carbon emission. Transition needs to happen because every time we do a little bit more, every time we're going to go more and more into danger zone. And what's important here is really to think about the global carbon budget and what we pledged in the Paris Agreement, which is to really take a fair share of that global carbon budget and really reduce it as quickly as possible. And this is why how you do it matters. This is not about 2050 and thinking in 2045 we need to get into action. This is to reduce as quickly as possible because that reduces the overall amount of carbon that we put in the atmosphere, which means that it reduces, it has the best chance of reducing that increase in average climatic condition, which matters to all of us, because all our families will be impacted by that, and all of us will have to deal with it. So we really do want to get as quickly as possible into that green phase where we use renewable energy as much as possible. the thing that I really want to the Labour Party to get an impression is that we really need that war strategy. This is not a DEFRA problem, this is not a levelling up problem, this is not a net zero problem, it's all of us problem. We can't have one department going one way and the other one going the other way around. We need to think together, we need to get better at joining up. And that's why you get scientists writing bills. I mean, generally a scientist doesn't want to write a bill, that's not our job. But we get so worried. We really want to get that thing going forward because all of us have to deal every day with those dreadful news that George was going through, and none of us want to live in the future we are currently building for ourselves. Thank you.
If I could say one more thing, if I could shout across the political divide, this is not the time to roll back, to water down, to throw away the hard-won commitments that we've already made to net zero. This is the time to step up our resolve and to grow a very thick skin.
Thank you. Thank you, Nathalie, for what a fantastic way to really hit home about why we're here today and in support of the Climate and Ecology Bill. Now's the chance for questions. So, loads of hands, which is great to see. So I'll start in the front row here. Have we got a roaming mic or not? Or have I just imagined that we might? Okay.
From Wellingborough City LP. Thank you very much. Good speech, and we only get one planet, so it's really, really important to be here and to be taking action now. Some things, apart from backing your bill, which I've already done, I've had the flyer and I've written to my MP already while I was waiting, what are the practical things can we be doing now? As well as backing the bill, as well as putting policies forward, what else can we do? I mean, next year, do we get rid of all this paper and do we put your logos on the screen? Do we have one barcode that we can do rather than handing out all the paper? There was a lady in the environment tent last night, a Muslim lady, that said, practicalities of getting around. All her community used to ride in cars, and she's learning to ride a bike for the very first time and trying to overcome the way that her dress got in the way and actually making positive changes. She was being the change. So if there's anything else that you can give us that we can actually do as well as backing your bill, then I'd be grateful for that. Thank you.
Great question. Should we go to Kerry first on that?
Or should we take a
Or should we take three? Yeah, okay, we'll do three because we have got quite a lot. I'll continue on my way back, so the person in the right jacket.
Hi there, Andrea Westall, also Labour Party member. Really great this is happening, but of course we know that it's got to be cross-party, it's got to be fully embedded in everything that happens across government. So I wonder if there's any kind of way of thinking how this gets into all of these discussions around what happens with our constitutions, devolution, and get this absolutely core to all decision making and not just the bill which worryingly, a bit like the Climate Change Act, will get kind of watered down if another government comes in, which worries me. The other bit is actually implementation, and I just wonder if there's a need to really think about how we work at local level, because we can put all the national stuff up there and the targets, but it's things like, you know, if you're in Camden, for example, on a housing estate and you're looking already at that heat transition, the discussions are not happening at the moment. They're not actually happening. So proper problem solving with everybody, we probably have to change the way that we're doing politics and decision making in order to actually make this happen, because I'm not sure it's going to really work unless we do that.
Okay. And then if you just want to hand the orange t-shirt, let's go there.
Hello, yeah, I'm Adrian Johnston from your Forest East. I've got some bad news for you. We've now pushed 1.5 degrees according to BBC, as of like about 10 minutes ago when I just looked at it, on average. So what I would like to ask is, why is the Labour Party not why are we struggling to get this into our manifesto? It's a no-brainer, this one. Our CLP's back this. I would recommend that if you've got delegates, you go down and you have a chat with your delegates, because we're going to be voting for this at 3 o'clock. And we need all the support we can get, because we are up against it now. The time for action has got to be done now. And let's be honest about it, it's all right turning around saying to people, oh yeah, we can do it in 10 years. We ain't got 10 years. We've got to get on with it now. So I would urge everybody in this room, go and get your delegate, get in touch with him now and explain to him how the delegates are going to vote for it, and explain to him. And also, from the panel, right, from the Labour Party panel, I want to know why this isn't in the manifesto now. Okay?
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. We'll take those three. So, first question was about what else we can do, and the second question was more about what we can do cross-party, and then finally, why isn't this in the manifesto?
Okay, the very short answer to that is we don't have a manifesto yet. We have a policy making process and we never come up with the actual manifesto until the election's been called. And then there's something called a Clause 5 meeting, which is under Clause 5 of our Constitution, where some of the key players, you know, like the unions are involved, the Shadow Cabinet, the NEC, all come together. But it's an iterative process. We've got the document, the Green and Digital Future, that's come into conference. You know, we've got the opportunity through the priorities ballot today to have a more specific debate as well. But I would say, I mean, we are absolutely committed, as I've said, to action to keep us within 1.5 degrees. And I can only had a chance to talk today about domestically what we are planning to do. But obviously there's also that international leadership as well that we need to show to try to bring other countries on board. You know, I'm not defeatist about there's no point in us acting if we don't get other countries too, because we still need to do our bit. But in terms of leadership, and again, this is something that's been a complete abdication of responsibility from the government. So I'm not quite sure what you think we're trying to get out of putting in the manifesto, because I'm absolutely sure that this is going to be at the heart of it. And I would say, you know, I think the next election could well be the net zero election. And I think that's what Sunak's done by his action in the last few weeks or so. And I want there to be a year's worth of debate about these issues, bringing everybody on board. If you look at the polling that's been done, and the work that's been done by, I hope you know about LSEF, the new Labour Climate Environment Forum, they've showed that actually this is popular with the public, but the public need help getting there, which leads me on to partly about the practical things we can do, because I think it's government's role to make it easier. So we know that it's expensive to switch to an EV. We know there aren't enough public charging points. So there's all across the piece, we are looking at measures that could help us get there. Retrofitting homes, we've got a programme. We want to retrofit 19 million homes which don't meet EPCC standard within a decade. That'll be spending $6 billion a year on making, you know, warm homes. People are always a little bit wary about disruption to their homes, and but if you can do it on a street by street, area by area basis, if they know that money's coming in, if we can make sure that there is skilled people to do the jobs, because whenever there's been previous programmes, there's been quite a lot of cowboy builders and a lot of uncertainty in the industry. So we have a role to play in making sure that it's easier for people to make the transition. In terms of cross-party, we do work cross-party, and there's a lot of Tories that are really unhappy with what Sunak's been saying in the last few weeks or so, and not least my constituency neighbour is Chris Skidmore, who did a really comprehensive net zero review for the government, incredibly frustrated that you know, Lord Deben, who is now stood down as chair of the Committee on Climate Change, but a Tory peer, was a Tory cabinet minister, Zach Goldsmith on the nature front, and Ben Goldsmith, his brother, Olivia and I were with him, not to name drop, but Chris Packham did a little boat cruise around Poole Harbour the other day, and we were there, and Ben came bounding up to me, and it's like, you know, Labour's almost like Labour's going to save us, you know, and they've been quite open in just how appalling the situation is with the Tories. So there is that cross-party working, and we will certainly, you know, we've got the energy bill coming back after recess. Whenever there's an opportunity to join forces, we will work with them. And if you add Labour votes to the votes of the decent Tories, the ones that are on the same page as us, then, you know, there is a fairly good chance that we can defeat the government, and certainly can in the Lords as well.
Absolutely, great. Any comments from you, George?
Well, the solution is both top-down and grassroots up. We need a lot of education, we need a lot of people taking action. I'm for my pain, this is the president of the Otley wildlife friendly Otley. So this is a town in Yorkshire.
I'm from Otley.
I didn't actually, but thank you. who are now committed to being a wildlife-friendly town. So everything they do, centre of everything they do, at the heart of everything they do, will be the natural world. That is absolutely right, as it should be. No matter how much cash you assemble, you accumulate in your life, when you're sitting on top of a bare rock with nothing to spend it on, you know, that is the ultimate end result. So nature is what sustains us, our livelihoods, our economies, us. We've got to take care of it. So you can either get like what we're going to do and hopefully show the rest of the country that this is what local councils and local government can do. If you're not thinking about nature, don't think about it. And at the other end of the scale, top down, we just need to make it so. Just, you know, this is, can they not realise, oh God, I feel like hitting my head off a wall sometimes. You know, do they not realise that we depend on the natural world? Totally, for everything.
Absolutely. Couldn't put it better myself. And find it?
Yeah, I wish sometimes that the politics got the emergency bit behind this. I get that people will be a bit disrupted with changes in their home and stuff, etc. But they will get even more disrupted when their home are flooded or on fire with wildfire, or there's no water to use. And that is the future we're going to get in. I think in terms of emission and 1.5 degree, I think it's really important to understand that there is the target 1.5, but there's more importantly the global budget and our fair share. And so what's really important is not to say, oh well, we passed 1.5, well let's just get frivolous again, but really to say in Paris we agreed of a global budget to go to 1.5, and we're going to get to that commitment, which means the UK need to reflect ideally the Labour Party would need to reflect this position of the need for the UK to be in line with its fair share of the remaining global carbon budget, and really get going with action in terms of both nature recovery and when you were saying how do you do it, I think George is right, it's just top down and bottom up, but there's a lot to do with inspiring people, reconnecting them with nature, reconnecting them with their environment, making sure that the environment is not just for the rich, and making sure that people in cities understand that they're also in nature and that there can be nature in cities. Really thinking about that connection and that empowerment, as well as making sure that we have leaders that actually appreciate and do something about the emergency we are facing.
And appreciate that it's going to hurt.
Yes.
To get us out of this mess, it's going to cost money. It's going to hurt. People are not going to be able to live the way they used to live. The option is 10, 100 times worse.
Yeah, but can I just come in on that? Because I think that is partly playing into Sunak and some of the Tories' narrative that we can't afford to do net zero. You know, the delayers and that. And actually, renewables are far cheaper than, you know, if you want cheap, clean energy, if you want your energy bills to come down, you want to switch away from fossil fuels to clean, cheap, renewable energy. You also want a home that's been retrofitted so you don't have to spend as much. You also need action within the whole sort of supply chain so you have products that don't emit as much, you know, don't use as much energy and that. But so I think it's very important not to say to people this is painful. You know, it's going to require change, and change can always be an anxious thing for people, particularly if they haven't got much to lose in the first place. But I think we need to say this is opportunities, and also the opportunities on the job front as well, and just the opportunity to live in a much nicer environment. So on the nature side, I think that's where the inspiration side bit comes. You can't really inspire people very much talking about you might be getting a heat pump soon, you know. But in terms of we're going to green your cities, and you know we're going to, you know, you can be able to breathe clean air again. You know, everybody wants that. Almost everybody.
Great. I think we've probably got time for another round. So I'll start at the back this time and work forward. So we've got one at the back on the left-hand side and then two on the back on the right. So if we can do those. Yes.
Thanks very much. Kerry from Friends of the Air. First of all, I'd just like to say I'm loving the number of women on this panel, and I hope that this continues through the rest of the conference. So we obviously are hugely supportive of the Climate and Ecology Bill, but we're also hugely supportive, as the panel have mentioned, of the need for people to have the power here, people to be able to hold government to account, and for people to be able to, in the future, if future governments do not hit targets, do not take action, to be able to take action for themselves. So what I'm wondering is whether within the Climate and Ecology Bill or in other legislation, you feel like Labour could bring in a legal right to a healthy environment and the tools through which individuals could take public bodies or indeed companies to court and ensure that where their right to clean air, clean water, etc. are threatened, those things are mitigated, those things are compensated for, and most importantly, those things are stopped.
Fascinating idea. So at the back, yeah.
I've got loads of points, but I'll stick to one. George, you talked about free markets, but the fact is the biggest barrier to biodiversity is in this country and around the world is grazing and the amount of land used to produce food for the animals that raised in factories.
Yeah.
And this isn't the free market, this is subsidised. I came down from Scotland on Friday, just ahead of the rains, just before the trains got completely snarled up. And there's little patches of land that's allowed to do its own thing, but mostly it's like a golf course dotted with white sheep. We're paying for that, and then the rain comes, there's no trees, there's nothing to hold the water back. And the speaker who was talking about punishing bad stuff, we are funding this crazy stuff. We're funding these chicken factories that are belching ammonia into the waterways. Soon, the Tories are talking about a meat tax. It's not a meat tax, it's that we are subsidising meat. We need to pull the subsidies on this crazy stuff.
I absolutely couldn't agree more. Sorry.
Can I take one more?
Oh, one more.
I was going to take the third one. So just behind you as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, hi there. Came hoping to sort of hear what was in the bill, and I mean, there's been lots of nice stuff said, but I don't really know what's actually going to be done. And I've just read through the bill, and it's pretty light. I don't really know anymore really what's actually going to get done. I mean, there's lots of ambition, which is very good, but actually, I come from industry, and reading through it, I don't know how I would do anything to support you in delivering it.
Okay. Do you want to go in first then, George?
Well, just about the fact that England's green and pleasant land, and Britain's green and pleasant land, is sheep-wrecked, as they call it. Yeah, far too many sheep, far too many deer, far too much grazing. We are a relatively small island, and yeah, we are eating far too much meat. Absolutely right. And we're shipping soybean from Brazil to feed cattle to make hamburgers and all the rest of it. Yeah, I mean, a big change is going to have to come. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And when I drive around looking at the rolling farmland, which we tend to think of as children as being, rather nice. It's not rather nice. It's a mess. An absolute mess. And we certainly need more trees, a lot more trees. Frantically planting stuff, of course, is not the answer. Let's just let our hedgerows regenerate. Let us let our woodlands regenerate. The only thing that gives me hope, actually, in my advancing years, is that the natural world is incredibly A, resilient, and B, puts itself back in order relatively quickly. Whenever you stop doing the stuff you shouldn't be doing to it, it does actually come back. But I agree with you, subsidies for meat eating and for sheep farming are probably nuts. I'll probably get now hate mail in my inbox from upland sheep farmers.
And they could get the same subsidy to do something different.
Yeah,
Give them subsidy, but just get rid of the wretched sheep.
And some other animals that shouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I just would like to come back to the point about the right to clean, healthy and sustainable environment. I love that point because it was actually a UN General Assembly resolution adopted unanimously in July 2022, I believe. And over 100 countries, I think, have actually put that in their legislation, but not the UK. And I'd love to see that too, because it was adopted. It was, and there's a lot of countries going for this, and I think this is a fundamental right, especially for the future generation. It's just not acceptable to give them the environment in such a state, with all the limitation that goes with it. So yeah, absolutely. But I think you made the point about land use. The comment about the bill. I think if you're really serious about giving people a space to inform a world government strategy, then you can't be prescriptive in the bill about what you're going to do. You have to accept that you're going to let people have a chance to discuss it and agree together. And I think that's why the bill was constructed that way, because a top-down approach where we say you're going to do this, 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 has very low chance to change, as opposed to people coming together and say we will agree to go that in that time frame. And so the bill was very serious about engaging people through that assembly and through a legally binding document and a strategy that is shaped by people and then implemented and then legally binding. And I think it's quite normal that as an individual you might struggle to see how you will help right now. But what we hope is that that bill will deliver a strategy that is legally binding where you would see how to help, giving the space for everyone to actually inform that strategy. And I think that reflects how serious we were about that.
And to put nature at the heart of the government, at the heart of what we do.
Yeah.
So we think about it all the time, not just occasionally for effect. It's got to be the basis of what we do.
Okay, yeah, so briefly, in terms of what Kira said, I mean, there are some legal routes to challenging things. The reason why we've got clean air zones in quite a lot of places across the country is because the government was taken to court for failing to meet legal air quality targets, but it can be difficult to navigate that. We know that actually, just the financial costs of taking that. That's why organisations like Wild Justice are important, because they are prepared to sort of stand up. And, Client Earth were the ones that took the government to court about air pollution. So, but I agree with you that people, I think if you look at America and the American Constitution, everyone in America knows what their constitutional rights are, and they know the route to which they can sort of take action. And I would love to have that sort of ethos embedded here. In terms of industry, I think, as I said, I welcome the fact that Olivia's bringing this bill forward, but part of me does worry because we absolutely need very concrete action now. And on day one of a Labour government, I want to see us start implementing, GB Energy, the Green Prosperity Plan, the retrofit, getting everything that. And there's an industrial strategy that Johnny Reynolds has developed. There's an awful lot of work being done. So I think the two things can go in tandem. But I think, in my days, a long time ago now, when I was a councillor, I used to get so frustrated because everything had to go out for consultation. And it was actually the Director of Housing's way of never doing anything. I think, we've got to consult the tenants, we've got to do this. And it's just like, there are some things had to be done. I use that example because I was chair of housing for a while. I wanted an empty home strategy. I wanted it to happen then, So I think there's a balance to be struck. We want to have dialogue with people and that, but there are some things that we know what the answer is, we need to get on with it. And in terms of, this is almost like my pet topic, the sort of land use side of things, I would say I'm doing an event, but I think it's just a private roundtable later today on this triple lock. I don't know if you've heard this triple challenge bill that WWF and others have proposed, which builds on what Olivia's doing, but it's climate, nature and the food system. And the food system, food waste is a massive carbon emitter. We know, the livestock sector in terms of deforestation of the Amazon, and there's just so many ways in which we need to address that.
Commit to tackle the climate change and nature crisis together. And I want them to come up with a world government strategy, which is legally binding. I would like, and I want to see Labour to commit to halt and reverse a biodiversity loss by 2030. And I want them to commit to reducing emission in line with its fair share of the remaining global carbon budget for 1.5 degrees. And that's really why I'm here today.
And the time is now. to not take action now is a complete dereliction of our duty. Complete dereliction. And future generations will hate us. They will hate us. I'll leave you one little thought. Probably the most important biological substance on Earth is soil. The amount of soil on Earth is vanishingly thin. If you imagine the Earth as a football, the crust of the Earth, the crust, which is 15k thick in places, sometimes more, is the thickness of a postage stamp stuck on the outside of that football. And on the surface of that, in some places, is a thin, ethereal, brown, watercolour wash of soil. We passed peak soil 10 years ago. 10 years ago. The amount of soil being produced now is less than it's been formed. Think about that. That's what we depend on. That stands between us and destruction. Take action.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kerry,
I'm going to be very quick because I think you ought to have the last word on that. But I would just say, in terms of what you were saying that you want Labour to commit to, I think we're pretty much committed to all of that. And I hope that you will be, like I said, last year's conference, I just was so enthused by the fact that we were talking about green issues at the heart of everything. We will be doing that again at this conference. And some of it might sound, because it's linked to things like, you know, jobs and skills and industrial strategy and that, it might sound like it's at the drier end of things. And I do think, you know, I want to sort of, Steve Reed, I think, is speaking tomorrow, or was it Tuesday? Well, you know, in his speech, I want to see him reaffirm our commitment to the nature side of that as well. But I think we do absolutely get that this is incredibly important. It's something that we're passionate about, but also that I think the British public is passionate about. And I think, you know, in terms of, you know, when we were asked what people can actually do, I think in terms of having that conversation locally. So, for example, I've got a low traffic neighbourhood pilot that is about to happen in my constituency. And some people have come out against it, and they're quite loud voices. Unfortunately, actually, it's the local church that seemed to be most opposed, but I think that anyway. But one person contacted me and said, I'm really worried because actually I wanted to let you know I support it. And I said, well, can you get other people to say that? And then the balance was restruck, and there was this group of like parents at the school that had actually started campaigning for this a couple of years ago, and they suddenly remembered, you know, that they needed to speak out. Just because they'd won in terms of we are doing the pilot, it wasn't the time to stop talking about it. And I think that sort of local action, and there's so many brilliant things, you know, certainly I'm lucky to be a Bristol MP, but I know like Sheffield's like that, you know, guerrilla gardening groups, or, you know, pollinator campaigners, all sorts of things. And people do, there was this Fabian pamphlet quite a while ago now, but it basically said that people, sometimes the Save the Planet stuff is a bit big for people, and what they really relate to is their own green spaces. So, you know, if you can be wild, a little patch of grass on his estate by planting a few things in it. I hate those little grass triangles that don't do anything. You know, the developers think that they've ticked the box green space because it's a bit of, you know, I'm not very keen on lawns anyway, but you know, that no mow May and things like that, that's how you get people engaged, and they realise actually everyone can not mow, if anyone who's got a lawn can not mow their lawn, can't they? It's actually easier. So I'll leave it like that.
brilliant. And yeah, thank you to you all our speakers. It's been a pleasure to be chairing this session, and to hear so many constructive comments and questions from the audience as well. It's clear that the CE bill has a lot of support, and I'm really pleased about that. So if you've not already, please do sign up as a supporter. As has been said, it's really important that we weave the CE bill into Labour policy and our manifesto through the process of policy making in the party. And we have an immense opportunity this week, so please do help the campaign however you can. And we need to have all hands on deck to keep this a top priority within the party and the leadership. And now, before we all leave, if everyone is willing, photographs apparently help with this sort of thing, so if people would like to be in a photograph, please come to the front and we'll do a quick photo if you want to show your support. And thank you so much for everyone for coming, and hopefully this is just the start of